you're friends with someone who doesn't even know you exist? Let's talk about it. I can guarantee that most of you are involved in parasocial relationships. It's estimated that 51% of Americans are, although only about 16% will admit to it. And yes, that includes you, the 50-year-old man obsessed with a particular sports team.
Your Dodgers have won the World Series!
A parasocial relationship is when someone develops a one-sided connection with someone else, typically a celebrity, who doesn't reciprocate those feelings. For example, whether you love or hate Taylor Swift, you're in a parasocial relationship with her. These relationships are common and perfectly normal, to an extent, because humans are social creatures. Innately, we want to make connections with people, and as media becomes more prevalent in our lives, it's only natural that we start to form these connections through our screens. The term parasocial relationship was coined in 1956 by Donald Horton and Richard Wohl, who observed how TV viewers began to develop the illusion of intimacy with TV stars. In 2002, psychologist Lynn McCutcheon expanded on this concept with the Celebrity Attitude Scale, which essentially broke down the idea of parasocial relationships into 3 tiers. The first and tamest level is entertainment social, which describes a fan who sees a public figure as interesting enough to casually discuss with friends. They appreciate or mildly dislike the celebrity in question, but don't really have an emotional attachment to them. The second level is intense personal. Here, the fan considers the celebrity in question their soulmate. They resonate with the celebrity's values and maybe even adopt them as their own, taking after the celebrity's persona. The fan believes they have a personal connection with them, which may lead to them staunchly defending the celebrity against criticism online or engaging in other acts that sort of reach the level of celebrity worship. The third level is the rarest but most dangerous, borderline pathological. This level is tied to a very poor mental health state, where the fan worships the celebrity to such an extent that they may stalk, assault, or kill them. About 3 to 5% of people in parasocial relationships meet the criteria for this category, which again isn't a lot, but when it does happen, the effects are astronomical. As I'll talk more about later, the first 2 levels of parasocial relationships aren't that bad, but level 3 is volatile territory. And when it comes to portraying this chilling dynamic, no film does it better than Perfect Blue, which explores the terrifying consequences of obsessive fandom set against the backdrop of the early internet. Perfect Blue is one of my favorite movies ever and largely the inspiration behind this video. Released in 1997, the film follows a moderately successful pop star turned actor as she navigates this career change. Unfortunately for her, some of her biggest fans don't quite agree with this decision and go to extreme lengths to maintain the protagonist's innocence, to the point of stalking, assaulting, and attempting to kill who they believe is the imposter in their idol's place. Throughout most of the film, we focus on someone who goes by the online persona Me-Mania. His characterization is not very subtle. He's a creep and he looks like one. He absolutely idolizes Mima, the protagonist, finding ways to get close to her or protect her where he sees necessary. This protection starts with fighting a group of rowdy teenagers at one of Mima's performances and develops to the point of almost raping her with what I can only assume is the intent of claiming her as his. Me-Mania obviously has some issues with mental health, seeing as though his entire life revolves around Mima. However, the situation is made worse when Mima's manager, Rumi, takes on Mima's persona online. Rumi creates a public webpage called Mima's Room, which seems like an online diary written by the protagonist, filled with information that only Mima and the people closest to her would know. This persona eventually manifests itself as virtual Mima, the ghostly yet tangible personification of Mima's outdated identity as a pop idol. Through this persona, Rumi is able to manipulate Me-Mania into believing he is Mima's savior, convincing him that her new career, which comes with more complex and adult acting roles, is against her will. The real Mima would never do anything so vulgar, after all. This dynamic highlights the dangers of idolizing a celebrity, especially when that idealized version of them is frozen in time, not allowed the freedom to evolve or mature. A lot of borderline pathological relationships have this issue where a fan expects the celebrity in question to remain perfect and innocent, which creates unrealistic pressures. This reminds me of any time a K-pop idol is bullied out of a new relationship, or, more terrifyingly, the case of Bjork's infamous stalker. I won't talk about him for too long because this is not a true crime channel, but for context, in the 90s, this fan obsessed with the singer Bjork became so offended when he learned she was dating a black man that he found her address in London and sent her a letter bomb in the hopes of disfiguring or killing her. Thankfully, the bomb was intercepted before it made its way to Bjork's house, but the situation is no less terrifying. Perfect Blue was released just a year after the Bjork incident, but the stories have some freaky similarities, down to the letter. The film also does a great job of exploring one of the main reasons parasocial relationships are much more prevalent now than ever: increased celebrity accessibility. In Mima's case, she wasn't at fault here because she had a pretty good impersonator, but the sentiment still stands. If I went on Instagram right now, I'd be able to directly message just about anyone, including some of the most famous people on the planet. Although the likelihood of getting a response back is slim to none, there is something about that act that makes us feel closer to them. Back in the early 2000s, the closest anyone could get to their favorite celebrity was seeing a picture of them in a magazine, reading an interview of theirs, seeing them on TV, or maybe, if they were really lucky, bumping into them on the streets of LA or New York. Today, these celebrities are live streaming and posting photos or stories that anyone can comment on, and sometimes they respond to those comments. And because a handful of fans have gotten responses, everyone else feels a little better about their chances of getting the same recognition. It kind of just snowballs from there, and in my experience, results in followers saying the most outlandish or abhorrent things, praying for any sort of acknowledgement. And it's so weird. I definitely understand the appeal from the celebrities' side to have a more direct connection with their fans, but more often than not, it seems like when fans have even a sliver of access to a celebrity, they're more likely to really push those boundaries. This isn't just for household names either. With the rise of social media, especially TikTok, more and more people are becoming micro-celebrities, with a little niche audience in their corner of the internet. At this point, fans really love to push boundaries, seeing as though it's a lot more likely for them to befriend someone with 10,000 followers than 10 million. In an article written by Uppbeat, an author with about 40,000 followers on Instagram currently, she talks about her experience on the celebrity end of a parasocial relationship. A few years ago, I had a fan. She had read my writing and listened to my podcast and often replied warmly to my tweets. Occasionally, she would send me private messages, and eventually, I started following her back. It was nice. At some point, the volume of communication increased. I began receiving emails, and the notifications and messages spread to Instagram. Then they grew more frequent, uncomfortably so. She wanted things from me, to work for me, to meet up with me, to know how my weekend had gone, to tell me how hers had gone, to tell me about the job she disliked, for me to help her with a project she was launching. My heart began to sink whenever I saw her name appear on my phone, and I started responding less and less in the hope of discouraging her overtures. Then she came to an event I'd organized, the first time we'd actually met, and to my mortification, presented me with a bundle of gifts, which I obviously sent a thank you message for. I'm not a monster. After a period where rarely a day would go by without some form of contact, invitations for a coffee, lunch, to her house, all politely declined, I texted a friend asking for advice. The attention had become suffocating, but I also felt a little guilty. She was pleasant enough, if somewhat intense. In the end, I chose the coward's way out. I blocked her on social media and felt an immediate sense of relief as I did so. It probably wasn't the kindest way of dealing with the situation, but I also reasoned that feeling anxious on account of a stranger's expectations of friendship from me wasn't what I'd signed up for as a writer. Blocking her was not the coward's way out at all. Boundaries are not reserved for people with enough followers. I would actually argue that unreinforced boundaries in parasocial relationships are bound to lead somewhere dark. This actually reminds me of a movie I saw once. Released in 2017, Ingrid Goes West is truly a time capsule, featuring Instagram's peak UI and those blown-out, sun-soaked photos that every curated, effortless influencer loved posting that decade. In the film, not only do we get a glimpse into the fictional life of one of these influencers, we follow the protagonist, Ingrid, on her journey to befriending a micro-celebrity. Following the death of her mother, which seems to be the catalyst for Ingrid's poor mental health, Ingrid inherits a lot of money. So much so that when she gets a single reply from Taylor, an influencer she is obsessed with, she uproots her life and travels to California with the goal of inserting herself into Taylor's life. As creepy as this premise is, Ingrid starts her search for Taylor relatively sane, waiting around at a cafe she knows the influencer frequents, and eventually running into her at a store in the neighborhood. When that encounter doesn't go as planned, Ingrid follows Taylor home, kidnaps her dog, and pretends to find it the next day. She responds to the dog's missing poster, and finally, she has an in. From there, a friendship blossoms between Taylor and Ingrid, starting with a thank you dinner and developing into a road trip where the two bond so well that Taylor decides to post a photo of the couple on her Instagram account. It should be noted that this friendship does not grow by any natural means. Ingrid does whatever she can to please Taylor, from buying her husband's subpar art to stealing her landlord's truck to help Taylor move her trailer. However, when Taylor's annoying brother steals Ingrid's phone at a party and threatens to reveal her obsession if Ingrid doesn't pay him to stay quiet, she really goes off the deep end. After giving herself a black eye and convincing her landlord/boyfriend that Taylor's brother was the culprit, the two kidnap and threaten him in the middle of the desert. The movie would have been stronger if they killed him, in my opinion, but hey, I'm not a critic. Taylor's brother survives the incident and naturally tells his sister everything, causing Taylor to abruptly end her relationship with Ingrid. After several failed attempts to win Taylor's friendship back, Ingrid livestreams her attempted suicide and, in a fitting twist, survives and goes viral. By the end of the movie, Ingrid has millions of supporters, catapulting her into the influencer status she was so obsessed with. Obviously, Ingrid Goes West seems like a warning to anyone a little too open about their lives on the internet. You really don't have to post about your favorite coffee shop or show us the view from your apartment, even if unintentionally. People are crazy, and someone is bound to go a mile with the inch you give them. More than anything, though, Ingrid Goes West emphasizes how the responsibility of moderating a parasocial relationship ultimately falls on the fan. It's easier said than done, but you have to recognize when your obsessions have gone too far and learn to set boundaries with yourself. Influencers will probably always inadvertently let you know where they are or respond to a few comments with friendly replies, but it's up to you to realize that these people are not your friends or soulmates. Stalking and harassing them won't result in them falling in love with you. I'm preaching to the choir here, I know. Most of you aren't about to uproot your life to chase after your favorite celebrity, but still, it's worth emphasizing. Self-differentiation is a crucial skill. With all that being said, I don't want you to come out of this thinking parasocial relationships are inherently unhealthy, because they're really not. With a good amount of boundaries set, you can incorporate these relationships into your life in a way that enriches you. If you're anything like me, maybe you watch your comfort YouTubers during particularly emotional periods of time. To get a little personal, I lost my dog this year and moved halfway across the country a few months later, both of which were events accompanied by plenty of crying and then watching the same YouTubers I've watched since I was 15 on repeat because I knew that was something that would comfort me. And I genuinely think I would have gone insane without having those personalities sort of distract me when I didn't want to think about the stressful things going on in my life. And really, this applies to a variety of situations. In an interview with clinical psychologist Lynn Zubernis, she recounts the story of a suicidal woman who loved the TV show Supernatural. When the woman went to a fan convention and met one of the stars, he sensed that she was having a difficult time. He made her promise that she would stay alive and come see him at the next convention. She's still doing great, and it's 10 years later. In that same article, Gail Stever, who studies parasocial relationships, recalls the story of one woman she met at a Josh Groban concert who had recently lost her husband to an aggressive form of cancer. She felt sure the romantic part of her life was over. But she eventually realized that she had a little crush on Groban. She didn't entertain any notion that the two would actually be together, but she told Stever the experience helped her realize she was capable of having romantic feelings again. There's also the story of one woman who met Matthew Lillard at a convention following the death of her little sister, who was also a fan of the actor. I'm not gonna read this, but you definitely should. It makes me cry every time. I could go on forever about the people who use parasocial relationships as an outlet or a way to help them shape their identities or expand their social networks by connecting with like-minded fans. Truly, there are a million positives. I think the ultimate takeaway here is that while tame parasocial relationships can be wonderful, it's still important for us to limit the time we spend investing in these celebrities. These relationships can give us a sense of connection, but authentic, two-way relationships should always be prioritized. And that's about all I have. I definitely came into researching this video thinking I was just gonna shit on parasocial relationships the whole time, which is partially valid because there are so many terrifying stories of celebrity stalkers, but yeah, I mean, they're not evil inherently. I'd love to hear what you think about all of this. Do you feel like parasocial relationships have a net positive on your life? Or are you trying to slowly wean off of them because you're tired of the internet altogether? Because either way, yeah, I get it. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I'll see y'all later.